Money doesn't work the way you were taught. And the moment you understand that, everything you thought was safe starts to look risky. A self-made billionaire wakes up one morning and does something that would make most financial advisors physically uncomfortable. He doesn't cut expenses. He doesn't sell assets. He doesn't tighten his belt. Instead, he walks into a bank and takes out a massive loan. Not because he's desperate, not because he made a mistake, but because he knows this single move will make him even richer. Now pause that image for a second, because somewhere else, someone just like you hears the word debt and feels their stomach tighten. Debt means danger. Debt means stress. Debt means mistakes. That's what you've been taught your entire life. Avoid it. Pay it off. Escape it as fast as possible. But what if that belief is incomplete? What if the wealthiest people on the planet are using debt in a way you were never shown? And what if that difference alone explains why they keep pulling further ahead? Here's the uncomfortable question you have to ask yourself early. If debt is always bad, why do the richest people use so much of it? Today is a story about two investors. Same starting point, same market conditions, same intelligence, same returns. Over 10 years, one ends up dramatically wealthier than the other. Not because of luck, not because of insider secrets. The only difference is how they see debt. Most people assume the wealthy stay rich by hiding money, exploiting shady loopholes, or gaming the system illegally. The truth is far less dramatic and far more frustrating. They use the rules exactly as written. They just understand them better. And one of the biggest rules you were never taught is this: debt can be a weapon. Schools trained you to be an employee. They taught you how to earn money, how to save a little, how to borrow for things that lose value like cars, phones, and furniture. What they never taught you is how to borrow for things that make money. That single omission quietly keeps millions of people stuck in place. So let's meet our two investors. Call them Alex and Briana. Both start with $30 million invested in the market. Both earn strong returns. And at the end of the year, both owe $3 million in taxes on their gains. This is the moment where everything changes. Alex does exactly what he was taught to do. He sells $3 million worth of investments, pays the tax bill, and moves on. Clean, responsible, logical, problem solved. But Briana doesn't sell a single share. Instead, she walks into a bank and does something most people never even consider. She uses her $30 million portfolio as collateral and takes out a $3 million loan. She pays her taxes with the bank's money. No panic, no stress, no liquidation. Here's why this matters. Briana's $30 million stays fully invested. It keeps compounding. It keeps growing. Alex's portfolio is now $27 million. It's still working, but it's working with less. That gap might not feel massive today, but time has a way of turning small differences into enormous outcomes. And that's not even the real advantage yet. The real power is hidden inside the loan itself. That loan comes with a fixed interest rate, locked in, frozen in time. And when you lock in a cost while inflation keeps rising, something strange happens. Inflation quietly starts working for you instead of against you. Here's the part most people never hear explained clearly. When you borrow money at a fixed rate, say 5%, that cost never changes. But the dollars you use to repay that loan become less valuable every single year. Inflation erodes the purchasing power of money, which means you're paying back that loan with cheaper dollars over time. The wealthy understand this deeply. They don't fear inflation the same way everyone else does. In many cases, they design their lives around it. This principle has a name. It's called leverage, and it cuts both ways. If you borrow at 5% and use that money to buy an asset growing at 15%, you've just created wealth using someone else's capital. But if you borrow at 5% to buy something that grows at 3% or worse, loses value, the math turns against you fast. That's how people go bankrupt. This isn't reckless gambling. It's calculated risk. It's only used when the numbers work and when the asset itself can carry the weight of the debt. And taxes are just the beginning. The real strategy shows up when it's time to grow. Imagine you own a rental building generating strong cash flow. It's stable. It's profitable. Then you spot a better opportunity. Another building, more units, better location, higher upside. Most people think they have only one option. Sell the first building, pay massive taxes, then try to buy the second one. The wealthy don't think like that. They walk into a bank and use the income from the first building as proof. Proof they can service more debt. The bank lends them the money. They buy the second building without selling the first. Now they own two income-producing assets, both appreciating, both generating cash, both expanding their footprint. Their original capital never stopped working. For most people, debt feels like a weight, something dragging them down, something tying them to payments, obligations, and anxiety. But for the wealthy, debt is the opposite. It's not a chain, it's a lever, a tool that gives them access to assets they couldn't otherwise control, a way to preserve capital that's already compounding, a shield against inflation slowly eating away at idle cash. This isn't about greed, it's about understanding the system you're already inside. In an economy where money loses value every year it sits still, the biggest risk isn't strategic debt. The biggest risk is standing still. The person who uses loans to acquire 3 rental properties is actively building wealth. The person who has enough cash to buy one property outright but leaves it sitting in a savings account is watching their purchasing power quietly disappear. That's the mindset shift. And it's not taught by accident. Schools weren't designed to create owners. They were designed to create employees. Now let's be absolutely clear, because this is where people misunderstand and get hurt. This is not a call to max out credit cards or chase flashy lifestyles. There's a massive difference between the debt that traps you and the debt that frees you. Consumer debt is what most people know. You borrow money for a car. The moment you drive it off the lot, it starts losing value. 5 years later, it's worth a fraction of what you paid, but the payments remain. That's debt tied to a liability. It pulls money out of your pocket. Asset debt is different. You borrow money to buy something that produces value, a rental property that generates cash flow, a business that creates profit, an asset that appreciates while the debt slowly shrinks. In this case, the asset pays for the loan. One type of debt makes you poorer. The other can make you richer. But here's where most people fail. Using good debt requires discipline. Absolute discipline. Every dollar the asset produces goes back into the system, paying down principal, acquiring more assets, strengthening the foundation, not upgrading lifestyles, not funding impulses. People see someone struggle with a loan and conclude debt itself is dangerous. Most of the time, the real problem wasn't the debt. It was the lack of discipline. The wealthy also understand something else most people miss. Debt creates momentum. It accelerates outcomes in both directions. Imagine putting $100,000 down on $1 million property. After expenses and loan payments, that property produces $100,000 a year in profit. You don't spend it, you reinvest it. The next year you combine that profit with more leverage and buy another property. Now you have 2 properties producing $200,000 a year. Over time, that initial $100,000 controls tens of millions in assets. That's leverage plus compounding. And it's how empires are built quietly. Now here's the part almost nobody talks about openly. Many of the wealthiest people in the world pay very little income tax. Not because they're cheating, because they've structured their lives so most of their wealth comes from asset appreciation, not wages. Asset appreciation isn't taxed until you sell, so they don't sell. Instead, they borrow against their assets to fund their lifestyle. A loan isn't income. It's not taxable. Meanwhile, their assets keep growing in the background. Compare that to the average person. You work. You get taxed on your paycheck. You invest what's left. You get taxed again on the gains. Wealth is extracted at every step. So when people ask why the rich keep getting richer, this is a huge part of the answer. It's not magic. It's structure. In a world of constant inflation, cash sitting still is a liability. And debt, when used correctly, becomes one of the most powerful wealth-building tools ever created. Think about money in a savings account earning 1% while inflation runs at 3%. You're losing 2% of purchasing power every year without doing anything wrong. You're already paying a hidden tax. You just don't see it. So the real question isn't whether you should ever borrow. The question is simple and uncomfortable. Are you borrowing to build or borrowing to consume? Understanding debt is only the first domino. Once you see it, you start noticing how differently the system works for people on the other side of wealth. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. If this changed how you think about money even a little, that means you're starting to see the system more clearly. Like the video, subscribe, and comment with one thing you were never taught about money that you're questioning now.